the term social distancing only goes so far, because really it's physical distancing, but there's opportunity for real social connection as opposed to, the things that social media has or can become.
You should see the absolute shit show. David Jeffrey would have a heart attack if he saw all the cables and just the situation that's going on here is like, it's just a makeshift room underneath my house. We'll stay in the lane of, I guess, kind of music and your just general wordsmithery
Sure.
that you kind of and your sort of positive vibes that you tend to put out, particularly sort of through social channels. I don't know. Tell me, I guess, kind of what the last couple of weeks has been like. Like, what as a musician, as a performing artist, what the hell?
Yeah. Well, I think disruption is probably the key word across everything. My project, Bullhorn, is an originals band that plays like original music as a brass band. So it's like kind of double on the original. And all of our niche sort of festival events and the touring schedule that we had is completely blown out of the water in terms of cancellations, which is fully understandable. But it's just strange timing in a year that we were ramping up with our touring, leading to an album launch and the platform that you use at album launch to then have touring around. And it's all kind of changed up in ways. But yeah, we're staying with the dance and seeing the opportunity amidst the disruption.
Yeah, I was having a chat the other day with a comedian friend of mine who sort of enlightened me in some ways to sort of say that, she has been asked whether or not she could take her comedy show and actually produce it as a web series or something like that. And it was a pretty definitive no. It was like, well, I feed off the energy. Like, take the canned laughter out of Friends, and it's just kind of goofy observation, you know what I mean? Like, particularly on the Bullhorn project as well, and most of the stuff that you do, you're very, very interactive with the audience.
100%. For Bullhorn, it is fair, particularly because just the nature of spaces and the physical dimension of a brass band. If we were looking at doing a kind of live stream version of a show with a particular studio, which is quite large, and it technically observed the parameters that we were allowed to meet in at that time. Just when you factor having such a large group of people in a studio space, which is sealed off for like 2 hours of filming a show, and it's brass instruments that are people blowing their air into the room. It's like there's physical dimensions to it that made us go, it's probably, I don't know, risk and reward. We're trying to balance self-care and looking after the emotional well-being and the connection of people with staying physically safe. That's the biggest challenge.
I'm curious, because it must be difficult for you. There's got to be that immediacy of like, the world's just gone bonkers. But you, like, speaking to you now, what sort of 14 days after most kind of like public stuff got locked down, you're really optimistic, and you're really like, you're really kind of seeing what's going to happen on the other side.
I have that little bit of luxury where thankfully I haven't been affected too much in my other income streams just yet. And I can kind of take a break without it being super detrimental or meaningful for what I do, which is very much play as opposed to work. When it's back on, it's going to be hopefully pretty crazy with all the different celebrations and festivals and gigs run in the spirit of coming back together again. And brass bands typically work their way into celebratory festivals pretty well. I feel for the community. I'm attached to a whole community of musicians who are like much more severely impacted and have taken the hit to their full income. There's been a mixture of responses in the community. There's a lot of emotional angst and ventilating online and social media, which is completely natural, but it's also just rolling with the punches. Just, people who are full-time solo cover artists or DJs are doing delivery driving, and they're still posting to social media like they would at their gigs from a delivery truck, and just keeping the positive energy going and seeing that there's still opportunity for human positivity and human connection together. Man, I have so much to be grateful for. I'm going to apply that to my own, quarantine creativity or hustle or whatever people want to take it as.
The quarantine creativity, that's the movement.
It is absolutely the biggest opportunity that I see, without sounding like some kind of, Gary V motivator. One, to practice and listen and do things that they just haven't made the time to do, because you do get busy gigging. Now there's a lot of opportunity for, I guess it's ironic, but for the musicians to listen and to take in, hey, where am I at? Read some books, reflect on your worldview, your values. How have those changed? Is that reflective in your creative practice, whether it's visual art or music?
Like, at what stage did you realize that you had this innate skill to just use language as a way to connect? For anyone who follows you on social media, you kind of buck the trends. While most people are taking a picture of their hot dog and using an emoji, not even an actual word, like you're writing like borderline novellas sometimes.
Yeah, I think it comes in two parts, so to speak. I definitely had an interest in language and a love for language very early. Like in high school, I was the English nerd, getting that, the English prize, because I just loved written form, verbal form. And then hip hop and rap kind of came into it when I was like, how do I make this cool? Like, how could I do this in a way? And, I didn't grow up with hip hop. I discovered it in senior high school and watched a documentary on freestyle rap. And then for me, it was like adrenaline language chess. To weave something that was an interesting experience for the listener, it just had me hooked. So that's what got me in there. On that, I started moving into, music scene and performing and lyricism. But really the second part to that is the kind of art or the process or the quest for vulnerability and trying to be more vulnerable. That only came later in life, once I'd had a bit more life experience and lived through some heartbreaks and some existential crises and things like that. And I started to go, you know what? Language is such a powerful way. It's literally, I can take the things happening in here, the abstract storm here, I can package that into little sound patterns that go through, in this case, technology. You can then receive it, and then it unpacks within your storm happening up here, all these ideas. And I literally still find that almost to be like a magic that we've just gotten used to. Like, we just take language so for granted, but it was the game changer between, grunting cavemen and everything that we see in the world. So it's just this powerful tool. And I was like, if someone was to use that, in my case, just to affect their local community and try to impact initially my however many friends on Facebook, when I started trying to write a bit honestly and a bit openly, I was like, oh, well, then I can kind of see a return on this horrible experience that I'm going through, or this feeling of loneliness, or this reflection on gratitude about space and existence, or whatever it might be. If I can just make it honest and actually vulnerable, that is what I would like to see in the space. So literally my main thing with social media is the same thing I have with music, is I just want to make things that I wish existed in the space.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really kind of sticks out to me is that it's almost like this reverse empathy, if there is such a thing. It's sort of this. Look, I'm not a person who is particularly good at articulating myself, and especially not particularly good at articulating how I'm feeling or what I'm going through. I have a really, really fond memory, sort of just after my mother had passed, and we had a phone call, and you kind of talked me through that you had you had a lived experience that was a couple of years kind of prior to mine, and it was this incredible thing where it felt like you were in my mind and you were articulating things that I was still processing. On one hand, it's wonderful to kind of have the poker face and try and stay stoic. Just the need, I think, not the need, but the that kind of feeling of being understood at that time is something I'll never forget.
Oh man.
And
I'm glad to hear it, because that's all we got, really. And to bring it back to a Corona present theme, I think that is where there's an opportunity more than ever before, is for people to come back to authentic, real connection, even if it's over Skype and over FaceTimes and people checking in with each other.